We're finally putting an end to this pathetic little game you call a business. My older brother, Marcus, leaned into the microphone, his custom-tailored suit radiating an arrogance that had been honed over 2 decades in my father's shadow. He adjusted the cufflink, a gift from Dad on his promotion to senior VP, and flashed a practiced, confident smile at the bankruptcy judge. From the front row of the gallery, my parents, the D'Angelo patriarch and matriarch, offered silent but potent support. My mother gave a faint, performative sigh, and my father, Anthony D'Angelo, maintained the unyielding, judgmental posture of a man who viewed this entire proceeding as a necessary, if embarrassing, formality. I stood at the defendant's table, my attorney, Ms. Chen, a comforting presence beside me, and said nothing. I let Marcus's lawyer present the fraudulent petition. I waited, allowing their false narrative of insolvency and corporate failure to wash over the courtroom, savoring the seconds before the truth would hit them like a physical blow. But then, Judge Elaine Albright, a woman whose reputation for meticulousness was legendary in the Eastern District of New York, paused. Her hand, poised to make a note, froze midair. Her gaze was locked on the corporate name cited in the filing. Her eyes narrowed, then widened imperceptibly. The air in the room shifted, growing suddenly cold. The opposing counsel, sensing the change, moved hastily toward the bench. Ms. Chen followed. Judge Albright's voice, usually crisp and clear, dropped to a harsh, low whisper that still carried an undeniable authority. Counsel, is this Nova Core Solutions? The same Nova Core Solutions that was just awarded the $245 million Department of Energy contract? The one profiled in Forbes as the future of sustainable infrastructure tech 2 weeks ago? Marcus's lawyer stammered, a barely audible denial dying on his lips. My brother, in the gallery, seemed to have been momentarily paralyzed by the mention of the contract figure. Judge Albright looked up, her piercing blue eyes cutting across the courtroom to meet mine. There was disbelief in her expression, but beneath it, a definite, slow-burning professional anger. I am going to require a complete and unredacted financial disclosure from both parties before we proceed, she stated, her voice returning to its normal volume, but laced with steel. Because either this is the most egregiously incompetent bankruptcy filing I have reviewed in 25 years on this bench, or someone is attempting to perpetrate a serious fraud in a federal courtroom. Mr. D'Angelo, she addressed Marcus's stunned lawyer, I suggest you take the recess to verify the veracity of every single document your client has submitted. Marcus's smug, unassailable confidence began to shatter, a hairline fracture running across his perfect veneer. I founded NovaCore Solutions 8 years ago. I was 25, with a freshly minted engineering degree from MIT and precisely $5,000 in seed money, the remnants of a modest scholarship fund. The D'Angelo family did not do seed money or garages. We did established wealth and generational prestige. My father, Anthony, was the undisputed ruler of D'Angelo Commercial Real Estate, a multi-state empire built on luxury high-rises and corporate parks. My brother Marcus, the heir apparent, was groomed from birth to take the throne. Every choice, every connection, a calculated step toward that inevitability. My younger sister, Sophia, fulfilled her family role by marrying a hedge fund manager and dedicating her life to exclusive charity galas and social status management. And then there was me, Isabella, the middle child, the perpetual outlier, the artistic one whose fascination with sustainable energy and complex grid systems was considered an unfortunate eccentricity. I had rejected the fast-track executive training Dad offered to pursue what he mockingly dubbed playing with solar panels and smart meters. When I told him I was leaving New York to set up a small R&D operation in Boston, his reaction was chillingly predictable. Infrastructure software? That's a niche, Isabella. It's a job for a grant recipient, not a D'Angelo business. Come back to the firm. We need a director of acquisitions. Marry a developer. Get a real career. The shift to renewable infrastructure is a $1 trillion growth sector, Dad. My proprietary grid optimization algorithms can reduce energy waste by up to 30% for major commercial clients. You're 25 years old. You know nothing about building companies, only theories from textbooks. You will fail, and then you will come crawling back, expecting me to write a check to clean up your mess. I will not. I won't fail. They all say that. You will. I left his office that day and never sought his professional approval again. The first 5 years of Novacor were a punishing apprenticeship in pure survival. I subsisted on microwaved meals and 4 hours of sleep, leveraging every professional contact and exhausting every reserve of mental fortitude. I learned the labyrinthine world of energy contracting through painful, repeated mistakes, a disastrous early partnership that almost bankrupted the company, a patent dispute that forced an expensive settlement, and the relentless, soul-crushing rejection from traditional venture capital firms who saw me as an unproven liability. My family, safely ensconced in their ivory tower of inherited success, watched my struggle with a mixture of pity and smug anticipation. "Still fiddling with those wires, Isabella?" Marcus would ask at the rare, obligatory family functions, his voice dripping with sophisticated contempt. "Still running that little side project?" "We worry about your financial stability, dear," my mother would intone, which I understood to be code for, "We're embarrassed by your lack of the expected status." I stopped attending the D'Angelo holiday dinners after year 3. The emotional toll of defending my ambition was better spent innovating my technology, and Novacor grew. Our core product, the Ether Protocol, was a revolutionary AI-driven system that used real-time weather, consumption, and generation data to autonomously manage and optimize localized power grids. We landed our first major utility contract in year 4, our second in year 5. By year 7, we employed 62 engineers, boasted $18 million in recurring annual revenue, and were being lauded in industry journals as the disruptive force the legacy energy sector desperately needed. The $245 million Department of Energy contract came 6 weeks ago, a massive, multi-year agreement to implement Ether Protocol across several key federal infrastructure projects. It was the contract that didn't just transform Novacor into a major player, but certified it as a national asset. Forbes ran the feature. Industry analysts spoke of a potential IPO, and institutional investors were suddenly queuing up for a conversation. My family knew none of this. I had maintained a deliberate, strategic silence about my success, operating under my married name, Isabella Vargas, for all public communications and filings. The few peripheral D'Angelo relatives who encountered news about I. Vargas, CEO of Novacor, never connected the dots to the daughter they had written off as a failure. I preferred it that way. Their validation was irrelevant. However, their interference, it turned out, was still very much a factor. The bankruptcy petition arrived 3 weeks after the DOE announcement. It was filed by Marcus, claiming that Novacor owed him $3 million from a personal emergency loan he had supposedly extended in year 2. The petition alleged that I had failed to meet repayment deadlines, that the company was on the brink of collapse, and that creditors, meaning him, required immediate court protection to recover their funds. Every single word was a deliberate, malicious fabrication. Marcus had never invested a dime in Novacor. His interest in my company had never extended beyond mockery. The documents accompanying the petition were crude forgeries, fabricated contracts bearing signatures I had never penned, spurious loan agreements I had never seen, and financial statements that bore zero relationship to Novacor's robust reality. It was corporate fraud, plain and simple, designed to do maximum damage. The goal was not to win a debt repayment, but to use the bankruptcy process itself, the inevitable freezing of assets, the required public disclosure, the immediate flight of cautious investors, to sabotage the DOE contract and destroy the company. I immediately called Ms. Chen. "They're trying to leverage fabricated documents to force a stay on the DOE contract," she confirmed after reviewing the filing. It's a staggeringly arrogant attempt at fraud. Any legitimate audit will expose this in hours, but the filing itself creates an immediate legal complication that could delay your federal commitments. That's the point. Marcus got wind of something big and decided to preemptively destroy it, I said, a deep, cold certainty settling over me. How could he know the scale of this? My mother's former secretary works for a firm that handles some of our municipal compliance work. She must have seen a preliminary internal memo and mentioned it at a social function. They don't know the $245 million figure. They just know I landed a big government contract and decided to step in and remind me of my place. Why this level of destruction, Isabella? Why destroy your success? Because my success proves their decades of dismissal were wrong, and they cannot tolerate being wrong. The court date was set for a brisk Thursday morning. I arrived early, dressed in a charcoal suit that was understated, professional, and uncompromising. Ms. Chen was already at the defendant's table, 3 heavy banker's boxes stacked beside her, containing 8 years of Novacor's meticulously documented financial history. Marcus made a grand entrance with my parents, a carefully orchestrated display of family unity and righteous injury. He wore an expensive Italian suit. My mother was dressed in funereal gray, looking like a woman whose heart was breaking over a family disgrace. My father was the picture of an aggrieved, morally superior patriarch. They avoided my gaze entirely. I was not family. I was a legal problem to be eliminated. Finally facing consequences, Marcus muttered to his counsel, loud enough for me to overhear. Should have listened to Dad years ago. The small courtroom gallery was nearly empty, holding only a handful of routine observers. None of them knew the spectacle they were about to witness. Judge Albright entered. I had read her background. 30 years of judicial experience, absolute intolerance for procedural gamesmanship, and a reputation for doing her homework. If anyone could smell the stench of Marcus's fraud immediately, it was her. The proceedings began. Marcus's lawyer delivered his performance, detailing the alleged debt, the supposed insolvency, and the urgent need for court-appointed protection for the victimized creditor. Your Honor, he concluded, the defendant has brazenly refused to honor a substantial family loan, choosing instead to prop up a demonstrably unprofitable venture that lacks any long-term viability. Judge Albright raised a hand, silencing him. The company name is Novacor Solutions, operating out of the Boston area. Yes, Your Honor. She typed something on her monitor, read it, and went perfectly still. The ensuing whispered conference at the bench felt like an eternity. I watched Marcus, whose cocksure grin was slowly replaced by a look of deepening uncertainty. His lawyer's complexion faded to a sickly off-white. My father strained forward, his expression shifting from detached judgment to genuine, visceral concern. Finally, Judge Albright's voice cut through the silence. We will recess for 45 minutes. During this time, I expect both parties to organize and present comprehensive, auditable documentation supporting their claims. Counsel for the petitioner. She fixed Marcus's lawyer with a glare that felt sub-zero. I issue a strong warning. Be absolutely certain of the provenance and authenticity of every document you have submitted. Should I find evidence of fraudulent filings in this courtroom, the consequences will be immediate and severe. The gavel slammed down. I used the recess to collaborate with Ms. Chen. We arranged the evidence across the defendant's table. Audited financial statements showing $18 million in revenue and robust cash reserves. The DOE contract, redacted for security but undeniably authentic, detailing the $245 million figure. Letters of interest from prestigious investment firms, tax returns, and, most importantly, the forensic analysis of Marcus's petition. Our document experts had determined that the alleged Year 2 loan agreements had been digitally created 6 days ago. Metadata exposed the fraud instantly. The signatures were clumsy, unsophisticated forgeries. The financial projections were pure fantasy. 45 minutes later, Judge Albright returned. "I have utilized the recess to conduct some preliminary research," she announced, her voice even, but radiating authority. "Nova Core Solutions is not a failing company. It is, in fact, a rapidly expanding, highly successful contractor that recently secured one of the largest infrastructure modernization contracts in the country." "Counsel for the petitioner," she addressed Marcus's lawyer directly. "Explain to this court why you have filed a bankruptcy petition against a company that, by all public accounts, is in exceptional financial health." The lawyer fidgeted with a stack of papers. "Your Honor, my client provided documentation of a debt. Documentation that, on even cursory review, is grossly inconsistent with the company's public financial disclosures and press coverage." Judge Albright then looked directly at me. "Ms. Vargas, or should I address you as Miss D'Angelo, given the petitioner is your brother? Do you wish to respond to the allegations of debt?" I rose slowly. "Your Honor, there is no debt. There was no investment. Every document submitted by the petitioner is fraudulent, created specifically for this filing. My brother, Marcus D'Angelo, has never been involved with Nova Core Solutions in any capacity other than as a cynical critic. This petition is a malicious attempt to sabotage my company because my success invalidates his family-approved worldview. That is a profoundly serious accusation, Miss Vargas." "I have compelling evidence, Your Honor." I nodded to Ms. Chen, who began distributing copies of our documentation to the bench and opposing counsel. "These are Nova Core's actual financial records, certified by third-party auditors. This is the forensic analysis of the petitioner's loan agreements, proving they were fabricated less than a week ago, utilizing standard public templates. And this," I concluded, placing a binder on the table, "is a timeline of the petitioner's public statements concerning Nova Core over the past 8 years, demonstrating a consistent pattern of hostility, dismissal, and complete lack of involvement." Marcus leapt to his feet, his composure finally crumbling. "This is absurd. She's my sister. I have every right to collect the money she owes." "What money, Marcus?" I asked, my voice calm, flat, and entirely without emotion. "Name the exact date the supposed $3 million was transferred. Provide a single bank record proving the movement of funds. Present one piece of evidence that does not vanish under forensic scrutiny." He had no answer, because there was no truth to cling to. There was only spite, insecurity, and greed, dressed up in a court filing. Judge Albright spent the next 20 minutes in silence, meticulously reviewing the stacked evidence. The courtroom was a vacuum. Marcus's lawyer looked physically ill. My parents had abandoned their theatrics, the dawning realization that their carefully constructed world was about to collapse, reflecting in their horrified faces. Finally, the judge spoke. "I have reviewed all materials presented. The forensic analysis is conclusive. The metadata unequivocally demonstrates that the petitioner's documentation was fabricated recently, not years ago as claimed. The financial records submitted by the defendant show a company with significant assets, high revenue, and no outstanding debt to the petitioner." She turned her full attention to Marcus. "Mr. D'Angelo, I am dismissing this petition with prejudice, but this is not the end of your involvement with this court. Filing a fraudulent bankruptcy petition is a federal felony. I am immediately referring this entire matter to the United States Attorney's Office for investigation of potential charges of perjury, attempted wire fraud, and obstruction of justice." Marcus's face was pure white. "Your Honor, there's been a mistake, a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," she responded, removing her reading glasses. "You submitted forged documents to this court. You alleged debts that do not exist. You attempted to force a successful company into bankruptcy through deliberate, documented fraud. And let me enlighten you further. Intentionally interfering with a Department of Energy contractor, a company essential to national infrastructure resilience, can trigger additional, far more serious federal charges. the government takes an extremely dim view of individuals who jeopardize critical national assets. National security? It's just my sister's little tech company. Your sister's little tech company provides critical infrastructure optimization to the United States government. Sabotaging it is not merely fraud, Mr. D'Angelo. It is a threat to federal interests. She turned to me. Ms. Vargas, I apologize for the court's time being wasted by this malicious and frivolous filing. Your company's reputation will not be affected. I will ensure the record officially reflects the fraudulent nature of the petition. Thank you, Your Honor. Case dismissed. The aftermath was a swift, brutal descent into chaos. Court security officers approached Marcus and his lawyer concerning the criminal referral. My parents attempted a quiet escape, but I intercepted my father just as he reached the aisle. His expression was a devastating mix of shock and impotent fury. Mr. D'Angelo, I said, using the formal address, I assume you and Mom were aware of this scheme? He turned, the patriarch crumbling before my eyes. Isabella, this was all Marcus. He assured us it was just a legal technicality to get his money back. You were sitting in the gallery, nodding along while he tried to destroy my life's work. Don't insult me by pretending you weren't complicit. You enabled the attempt. My mother finally approached, tears of true, belated shame welling in her eyes. We thought we were helping. We thought the company was actually failing. Marcus said you were insolvent. Marcus said what he needed to justify his actions, I stated coldly. And you believed him because it was easier than admitting that you were wrong about me for 8 years. The $245 million contract, that's real. The 62 employees who depend on NovaCore, they're real. The technology we developed to stabilize the power grid, that's real. You tried to destroy all of it because my success challenged your narrative. Isabella, please. I'm done. Whatever happens to Marcus legally is his problem. Whatever lies you tell yourselves to sleep at night are yours. But I'm drawing a line. Do not contact me again. You are not my family. Family does not try to bankrupt family with forged documents. I walked out of the courthouse and never looked back. The federal investigation was swift and uncompromising. Marcus's lawyer, facing disbarment and a potential obstruction charge, cooperated fully. He revealed that Marcus had approached him with the scheme, claiming NovaCore was a financial black hole that needed to be shut down before it stained the family name further. The primary, intentional fraud was Marcus's. Charges were filed within 8 weeks: bankruptcy fraud, perjury, and attempted interference with a federal contractor. Marcus faced up to 15 years in a federal penitentiary. My father used every ounce of his remaining influence and a vast sum of money to secure a plea deal that reduced the sentence to 4 years. Marcus was stripped of his title, faced inevitable disbarment from any future corporate directorship, and would carry a felony conviction for the rest of his life. The D'Angelo commercial real estate empire survived, but my father was forced into an early, uncomfortable retirement. The reputational fallout of having his heir convicted of federal fraud made him a toxic figure to his high-net-worth clientele. 6 months after the sentencing, my mother sent a letter, a careful tapestry of self-justification and non-apology. We never intended for it to go this far. Family must forgive. Surely you can understand our perspective. I didn't respond. NovaCore Solutions celebrated its 10th anniversary last month. We now employ 180 engineers and specialists. Our contracts with the Department of Energy have expanded to $500 million over the next 5 years. We've established a new development facility in Texas and are planning an international expansion. Forbes ran a follow-up feature titled "The Infrastructure Pioneer Who Survived a Family Betrayal." I granted one interview about the legal battle, carefully sanitizing the details, focusing on corporate governance and legal fortitude rather than personal anguish. The journalist asked why I believed my brother had attempted the fraud. Some people, I said, choosing my words precisely, simply cannot tolerate being proven wrong. They will attempt to destroy success rather than admit they misjudged potential. Do you have a relationship with your biological family now? I have an exceptional relationship with the family I have built, I replied. My husband, my partners, my employees, the people who believed in me when I had nothing but an idea and a $5,000 savings account. And your biological family? They made their choice. I've made mine. The interview ended there. 2 weeks ago, I received a letter from my sister, Sophia. She had always been peripheral, too consumed with managing her high society status to notice my struggles. But the scandal had, inevitably, affected her standing. People whisper about her felon brother, her disgraced father. I know you likely want nothing to do with any of us, she wrote. But I want you to know that I never agreed with how they treated you. I was just too weak to say anything. I always knew you would prove them wrong. It was an apology weighted entirely by self-interest, an attempt to sever her social tie to the D'Angelo catastrophe and reposition herself as the secretly supportive sister. I wrote back a single brief sentence. Support offered in silence when action was needed is merely complicity. But thank you for the letter. I meant the thanks. Acknowledgement, even self-serving acknowledgement, is a step away from denial. My son Leo was born 4 months ago. His name is short for Leonardo, after my maternal grandfather, the only D'Angelo who ever saw past the business degree and encouraged my engineering mind. He died a year before Novacor won its first small contract, but his last words to me were a simple, profound belief in my success. I hold Leo in the nursery I designed in the home I purchased with the wealth I generated, in a quiet, secluded neighborhood far from the D'Angelo world. I tell him stories of resilience, of building systems that matter, and of the fundamental difference between people who lift you up and people who try to drag you down. Your grandfather and grandmother, I whispered to him last night, his tiny hand curled around my finger. And your Uncle Marcus, they won't be part of your life. That's not a punishment for them, my love. It's protection for you. You deserve to be surrounded by people who see your potential, not people who need you to fail. He blinked up at me with eyes that haven't quite learned to focus. You're going to do amazing things, Leo, I murmured. And when you do, I will be your most devoted champion. That is what family truly means. Not shared blood, but shared unwavering belief. I lowered him into his crib and watched him drift off. This tiny, perfect person would never know the family that rejected his mother. He would only know the family that chose her, the one she built from the ground up. That is enough. It is more than enough. They dragged me into a federal courtroom, expecting to finally publicly brand me the failure they had always claimed I was. Instead, they proved themselves to be frauds, both legally and morally. Judge Albright recognized Novacor Solutions because we had built something of undeniable value, something worth recognizing, worth protecting, worth celebrating. They thought they were shutting down an embarrassment. They were trying to destroy a $245 million national asset. The courtroom was not their victory lap, it was their exposure. And now, while Marcus serves his sentence and my parents shrink into their gilded irrelevance, Novacor Solutions keeps growing, keeps innovating, keeps proving that the only thing more powerful than decades of family doubt is personal, unwavering determination.